There's a common goal among NFL franchises, and that is to win a championship. And we talk about why the Ravens can do just that in 2023 coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in, making us your first listen each and every day. Free and available, all podcasting platforms, including over in video form on YouTube. And we're here on a Taco Tuesday. It's a crazy day. Last night was unbelievable. For those who don't know, I'm a big Denver Nuggets guy, and they won their first NBA title, their first championship, and it was a surreal moment. You know, one of the best feelings, obviously, for the Ravens. They've won two championships in their short franchise history, and you know, each one of those have had so many feelings for so many different people. And on today's show, I wanted to keep the title spirit alive and talk a bit about why I think that the Ravens can. They have what it takes to win a championship in 2023. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to. You know, it doesn't mean they're the favorites or anything like that. I just wanted to talk about a bit of a, I guess, if you want to call it an optimistic view as to reasons why Baltimore can win a title this year. Look, I think a lot of teams can this year. There's a lot of I think they're going to be a lot of competitive juices flowing throughout the AFC, particularly. The NFC this year is not as strong as the AFC, but I want to get into the offense in the first segment. We'll talk a bit about that, talk about Lamar Jackson and why the Ravens offense can win the title. We'll talk about those reasons. Then in the second part of the show, I'll move over to defense. Defense does win championships, so we'll talk about what the defense has to do with a potential title run for the Ravens in 2023. Then in the final part of the show, we'll do a bit of a mini camp preview, talk about some of the storylines from there, what to expect as the Ravens, again, the whole NFL steps to continue to get to the 2023 season right now. So thank you for tuning in with us today here. And again, making us your first listen here on Locked On Ravens. Be sure to subscribe for free, both video and audio form. And if you want Ravens content, news, analysis, updates, we have it for you 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens. But let's now get into the Ravens and again why they have what it takes to win a title. Again, I think a lot of teams do. I think this could be any team's year. I think the Ravens are definitely in that conversation. And starting off with the offense, it all starts with Lamar Jackson, right? I mean, this is a guy that, you know, you talk about the Nuggets. I'll make Nuggets comparisons on the show today, just, you know, because I'm very excited about that championship. But Nikola Jokic is somebody who is their star, such a unique player. Nobody's really seen anything like him in the NBA game. Lamar Jackson, again, such a unique player. And while I know there's that mold of like, oh, you know, he's a running quarterback and, you know, what can he do or where are his strengths? Lamar's a player that, again, so dynamic both with his arm and with his legs. I think he has improved in certain aspects every single year. Does have the other areas he needs to improve in, but with Lamar Jackson, you always have a chance. You know, they say it in the NBA with Nikola Jokic, you always have a chance. With Lamar Jackson, you always have a chance as well. When he's on the field, he gives you a chance to win, and especially now in this offense. That's another reason why I really like what the Ravens have done this offseason, particularly, and why I think it will translate over to, I think, a much more consistent, obviously, assuming everyone stays healthy. That's a big part of things. The Nuggets stayed healthy. They stayed healthy throughout that entire playoff run. We've talked about it on the show in the NFL, where teams like, Los Angeles, Cincinnati, when they matched up in the Super Bowl, those teams were pretty much completely healthy. Philadelphia was a team that didn't go through a ton of injuries last year as well. When they made it to the Super Bowl, Kansas City, a team that didn't go through a ton of injuries as well when they won it last year. So health is a big factor in this. But assuming everyone stays healthy, Todd Monken replacing Greg Roman, that offense, it's stuff we've talked about all offseason, where to me, I think Greg Roman's departure, Todd Monken coming in, that's the biggest move of the offseason to me so far. Obviously, signing Lamar's huge. If we take that out of the equation, though, I think technically that's the biggest. But if we take Lamar out of the equation and say, well, what addition? Because Lamar, he wasn't added, he was re-signed. What addition was the biggest? I mean, look, I think Todd Monken, to me, is. Odell was huge. I think Odell was a huge signing for them. Adding Zay Flowers was really big. But to me, Todd Monken in that offense, giving Lamar more freedom in that offense, it's going to result in more trust throughout the Ravens' whole, not just Lamar. I think the trust with Lamar is a huge thing where I just don't think there was enough of that between him and Greg Roman. But just the whole offense and this team being able to rally around Lamar, that's huge. And just the way they're going to shift now. Lamar Jackson said, look, running only takes you so far, right? That's what it is. And I agree with him. They're not going to abandon that, though. We talked about on yesterday's show, should the Ravens sign Dalvin Cook? How realistic is it the Ravens go out there and sign him? If you haven't checked out that show, I highly recommend you do so. We talked J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards there as well. But with those two right now, I'm not going to get into Dalvin Cook on this episode because he's not on the team right now, but with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, they're not going to just abandon the run game. And they shouldn't. They should not. They've done it really well for, the course of Lamar Jackson's entire tenure. Now, I think what we're going to see is a lot less Lamar Jackson running. And, the team has made it pretty obvious that that's probably going to be what it is. But I think that's the right recipe where you don't want to completely take it out of the Ravens game plan if you're Baltimore. But at the same time, I think now you can keep Lamar fresh a little bit and have him just dice up defenses with his arm while also still having the ability to do it with his legs and not necessarily make all these designed runs happen for him. Wide receiver wise, pass catching weapons wise for the Ravens, their offense on paper is just so balanced. And that's the key word, right? On paper, you have to be able to put it together. For the Nuggets in training camp, when they were going through their whole thing, people looked at, Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. On paper, looked like a really solid starting five. On paper, the Ravens offense looks really good, but you got to put it together on paper and make sure those guys can all click together. We know that, Lamar clicks with Mark Andrews and J.K. Dobbins clicks with that offensive line, and, those pieces click, but how does Odell click? How does Zay Flowers click? Nelson Aguilar, how does he click? How's the new left guard going to click with the rest of the offensive line? Is it Ben Cleveland? Is it Daniel Faalele? But the Ravens offense right now is very high powered, and an offensive league right now, which you have in the AFC, very high powered offenses like Kansas City, like Buffalo, like Cincinnati. That list goes on and on and on. And NFC, Philadelphia's offense, very high powered as well. And a couple other teams in there that, Baltimore is going to have to compete with. This is an offensive league right now. I'm not saying defense isn't important. We're going to talk about defense in the second part of the show here. But with the way the NFL has gone, you have to have a high-powered offense. The Ravens' offense over the past couple of seasons has just been too inconsistent. There hasn't been enough growth on the offensive side of the ball. And while I think, a lot of that has to do with the fact that Greg Roman and his play calling wasn't necessarily up to snuff compared to some of these other offensive coordinators. Also, I think the fact that Lamar was injured, right? That's a huge thing where, it goes back to health. If your star player is injured, it tanks your ceiling and it tanks your floor. Tyler Huntley, I think, is a fine backup, but he's not the guy you want leading your team to a Super Bowl at this stage in his career. Maybe he'll never be. Maybe he'll develop into that guy. Maybe not. We don't know with Tyler Huntley yet. Lamar Jackson is the guy you want leading your team to a Super Bowl. Again, with Lamar, you always have a chance. So an offense is going to be a huge factor for whatever team wins the Super Bowl in 2023, whether it is the Ravens or not. But the Ravens made the necessary adjustments on offense. And I think this was a situation where, look, Denver had a lot of guys that they developed. The Nuggets had a lot of guys they developed. They were huge on the culture thing. The Ravens are huge on it too, where they like their guys, they trust their guys. And part of the reason the Nuggets won the championship was because of the fact that they didn't break up their core. They really stuck to, we're going to trust these guys. We're going to believe in these guys. Michael Malone, this is his 8th season in Denver. He won a title after 8 years in Denver. Obviously, John Harbaugh's already won a Super Bowl with the Ravens, but, for people who are, well, John Harbaugh's never going to win again, and you got to fire him now. This is a huge year for John Harbaugh, don't get me wrong. But that continuity and consistency is huge. But the Nuggets made the moves. They traded away guys like Will Barton and Monte Morris for other pieces to kind of make those final touches on the roster. I think the Ravens, getting rid of Greg Roman, Calais Campbell, someone who, look, you didn't want to lose him. I think that's a big loss for them. But bringing in a guy like Odell, it's kind of like swapping out guys who can contribute for other guys that can contribute just with different skill sets and at different positions. So bringing on Odell is huge there. Swapping DeMarcus Robinson for Nelson Aguilar. Will that be a huge upgrade? Probably not, but maybe it's an upgrade that they need so that they can go out there and win a championship. I'm not saying Nelson Aguilar is going to be the championship piece. Please don't say that. I'm not saying that, but again, this is an offensive league right now in the NFL. And look, it's a throwing league. Teams throw the football. Not saying you can't run it to win, but I think Baltimore is going to move into more of a throwing offense this year. And I'm excited to really see how they can utilize all their pieces in an offense that looks really, really good on paper right now. And look, it's seen success in the run game. We've also seen the success throwing the football, but it just hasn't been as much. I think Todd Monken can come in and really do a good job here. And part of this is one more Nuggets thing is the Nuggets brought in Ryan Saunders, who was their kind of like defensive coordinator. They got rid of Jordy Fernandez and went to Sacramento. So a coordinator change, technically, I know there are no coordinators in the NBA technically, but a quote unquote coordinator change was a huge reason why Denver's defense improved. And ultimately defense for the Nuggets was a big reason why they won the championship. For the Ravens, a coordinator change, I think, is going to be really big for them in a quest for a championship. And look, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but I think that they are much more well equipped to win a championship this year because of the fact that they decided to change coordinators, and that to me is so huge. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll be diving into why defense wins championships, talking about Baltimore's strong end to the year last year on that side of the ball, how they can continue that momentum moving forward. So be sure to stay tuned, plan to dive into here on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make your way to FanDuel because right now new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. And I still can't believe it. I'm over the moon. I'm ecstatic. The Denver Nuggets are NBA champions. I've been riding with them for a while. So to have this moment, it feels incredible. And look, hopefully the Ravens are next because it really is just a truly unbelievable feeling. And they have great promotions every day. FanDuel does. They have a safe and secure app. You can get paid instantly as well. So there's no better place to bet any action that you have. MLB, the Orioles. Hopefully the Orioles can put together a championship run. Do that at America's #1 sportsbook. Again, there's no better place but all that action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens, championship style. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. And no, not a Ravens championship. Unfortunately, hopefully that is coming soon here, but a Denver Nuggets championship. And for those who don't know, you might know it by now, big Denver Nuggets guy. And the feeling, the night for me last night was absolutely incredible. And again, obviously Baltimore's won a couple championships, right? But they want to win more. They want to win more. Lamar Jackson, I so badly want for Lamar Jackson to win a Super Bowl with the Ravens. I know so many others do as well. He deserves it. He's someone who is so competitive, as a lot of this Ravens team is. But we talked about offense in the first part of the show. I want to focus on defense here. Because the old saying, the age-old saying is defense wins championships. And look, it is true, right? You have to be able to defend against your opponent. Denver did. Denver's defense was considered the weak link for them for a while. You know, the big thing with Nikola Jokic for everyone was like, he can't play defense. He's a terrible defensive center, which is not true, by the way. That is the equivalent. I don't think necessarily to the extent that it is, but that was the equivalent for Nuggets fans as Lamar Jackson can't throw is for Ravens fans. Now, I think Lamar Jackson can't throw was super amplified and both very, very just unjust. Like both just did not deserve to have those criticisms. But that's what it is, where sometimes you just got to buckle down on the defensive end. Baltimore was able to get a ton of momentum on that end of the ball last year. And they didn't necessarily lose a ton of pieces. Again, the only big piece they lost was Calais Campbell on that side of the ball. They're going to trust in their young guys, Justin Madubuike, Broderick Washington, Travis Jones, a couple veterans still there too, Michael Pierce and Brent Urban. We talk about the defensive line room on yesterday's show too, so be sure to check it out again. Just a little shameless plug with that. But the Baltimore's defense is going to, if they win a championship in 2023, it's going to have a huge impact on what they're able to do and how far they're able to go and what that championship looks like. Because again, this is an offensive league. You have to defend against these offenses, like, you know, especially look, this is a quarterback driven league right now. You know, you have Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, but as I talked about in the first segment with the offenses, it is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, all these quarterbacks. There are so many others I can list where you're going to have to slow them down or stop them as best you can in order to win a championship, especially in the playoffs where, you know, some scores in the playoffs. I mean, Denver scored 94 points last night and won the championship that way. It was a horrid shooting game. Sometimes, you know, playoffs, the moments amplified. Playoff scores across all sports can be a little lower than regular season scores. I think we see that in the NBA. We see it in the NFL as well. So for Baltimore to be able to bring back Roquan Smith, sign him to that 5-year, $100 million extension. Patrick Queen's also in that inside linebacker room. You have a safety room that did lose Chuck Clark. That's another big piece they lost. I will say that. But Kyle Hamilton, his year 2 role, what's that going to look like? We talked about that last week. Marcus Williams was 5 years, $70 million. You're thinking, well, is that an overpay? Marcus Williams, steal, absolute steal for the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore's made a couple of really nice moves on defense, as well as being able to draft players as well. I mentioned Patrick Queen. I mentioned Metabike in Washington. But you have to have guys step up and trust in guys to step up. Obviously, in that corner room, Marlon Humphrey is there, top 5 corner in this league. Depending on who you talk to, he could be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Some people have him ranked 8th or 10th. I don't really understand that. But to me, what comes after Marlon Humphrey in that corner room? Rock Ya-Sin is a solid 2-3 guy, but then young guys are going to have to step up right now. Pepe Williams and Jalen Armour-Davis, maybe a Trayvon Mullen, Kailu Kelly. Those are the types of players that are going to have to step up for the Ravens right now, and hopefully for Baltimore, give them solid snaps. Edge is another one where you're kind of wondering what's a move going to be for them. Are they going to bring in Justin Houston? Danielle Hunter's name has been mentioned. Danielle Hunter's going to cost a lot. I don't know if Baltimore's willing to part with a first or a second. I'd part with a second in a heartbeat. I know some people would be hesitant to part with a first. Hunter is really good, though. It only make $5.5 million. But regardless, is it going to be at Afe Elway to step up on the roster right now? Is it going to be David Ojabo to step up on the roster right now? Tyus Bowser, I think, is a very solid, steady, consistent veteran guy, but not like a 35-year-old veteran. He's still in his 20s. But Tyus Bowser is not a guy who's going to go out there and get 10 sacks for you, right? He'll get you some sacks. No, he's still a good pass rusher. But to me, I think you really need to maybe add someone there. And this is about sometimes adding in season to either get you over a regular season hump or get you over a playoff hump. Baltimore has been active at the trade deadline. Eric DeCosta's made some really savvy moves here. And to me, on the defensive side of the ball, if you compare what I think this offense can be with what this defense has already shown, and look, it took a little time for Mike McDonald's defense to really figure it out. I always go back to that Miami game. If you're an everydayer on the show, you know what I'm talking about, where it didn't look like they were ready yet. And they blew a huge fourth quarter lead and lost that game. But then they got better and better and better over the year. Obviously, Roquan Smith, I think, sped up that process and amplified it with just how good he is in general. But I was really encouraged by that. And with a team that hopefully can, have a couple more sacks this year, the turnovers were great for him. I think after a very bad year in turnovers in 2021, stepped up to the plate in the big way in 2022. They continue that. Turnovers are absolutely key. Basketball is the same thing. But I think the biggest part of this to me, you can talk about offense, talk about defense. You can even talk about special teams. There's no really special teams in the NBA, but it's culture. Baltimore is considered one of the best culture teams in the NFL, just like the Nuggets in Denver are considered right now one of the best culture teams in the NBA. There was a buy-in with that team. Guys believed in each other. The locker room was insanely strong. The guys liked each other. They bonded with each other. It's the same thing with the Ravens. That locker room is very tight-knit. Guys have fun in there. Marlon Humphrey, the big jokester, guys like Kyle Hamilton and Patrick, all these guys in there have so much fun. But it's also about sacrifice. It's about sacrificing a role for the better of a team. I know that people are talking, if the Ravens signed DeAndre Hopkins, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, got to sacrifice. If the Ravens signed Dalvin Cook, J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards, got to sacrifice. The Nuggets traded for Aaron Gordon when he was a number 1 option in Orlando. He sacrificed his role to be pretty much a number 4 option on that team and won a championship with it. Michael Porter Jr. was such a highly touted high school prospect, would have been the number 1 overall pick, at least number 2, if not for back injuries. He sacrificed the role of being, maybe a 25, 30 point per game scorer as a number 1 option to be a number 3 option on that team and win a championship. So I think sacrifice is necessary for any team in any sport. Which players have to sacrifice, I think it's a year-to-year thing. But I think Baltimore, there's a lot of misconceptions I feel like personally about, if someone gets signed, these guys aren't going to be willing to sacrifice. There's going to be no willingness to sacrifice. I think guys would be willing in the event that a championship hangs in the balance. I think the Ravens culture is strong enough where sacrifices could be made and teams buy into that. And it really, I think, sparks things. So to me, look, maybe Baltimore doesn't win the championship in 2023. We're not going to know. It takes a lot to go right to win a championship in any sport. But look, anything can happen. And we saw that with Denver this year in the NBA. I know, it's not comparable between the NFL and the NBA, two very different sports, but it just the feeling that and look, Ravens fans have experienced it, a couple times already, but just to get back to that feeling for Baltimore, for the city, for the team, for the organization, it's what I want and what so many want so badly. So, big Denver Nuggets guy here, really excited they ended up pulling it off, winning the championship, but hopefully the Ravens are next. I think they can do it. I think they have what it takes. Obviously, you got to get through a whole season. You got to get through the playoffs and obviously win the big game too, but a lot of competitive teams this year who can win it. I think Baltimore definitely one of those. Coming up in the final part of the show, though, we're diving into a bit of a mini camp preview, talking about biggest storylines there, talking a bit about some positional battles. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to get to on Locked On Ravens. We're back here, our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Tuesday. Thank you so much again for being here with us, making us your first listen each and every day here on Locked On Ravens. And thank you for putting up with my my Nuggets content, my Nuggets comparisons here. If you're still here, thank you for still being here, because I know, look, basketball and football, two different sports, but I mean, look, for a team that, you root for so long. Look, I was in New Orleans when the Ravens won the Super Bowl, and that was an unbelievable feeling. I was able to share it with my family and friends, and it's incredible to just know that a team that you've rooted for so long is able to get to the top of the top. And so last night for me, it was incredible. Feelings just, still pouring out of me right now. So I really appreciate everybody who is still sticking strongly here today on Locked On Ravens. We do have Ravens content 5 days a week. I promise it's not only Nugget stuff here. Ravens content 5 days a week. But let's get into minicamp preview, minicamp storylines here. As again, we're on these stepping stones to the regular season, as voluntary OTAs, and I have minicamp and training camp, and then obviously preseason, regular season as well. There are some storylines that a couple of things I didn't necessarily expect when it came to storylines for the Ravens. Now, it makes sense. Kevin Zeitler might be looking for a new contract right now, but Adam Schefter said that Ravens guard Kevin Zeitler, who was not present for the voluntary portion of OTAs, will be a full participant in Baltimore's mandatory minicamp that begins Tuesday. Zeitler is still in search of a new contract, but he will report. So the way this is phrased is kind of interesting to me. I don't know if this is there was holdout potential with Kevin Zeitler. I wouldn't think there was. Maybe there is, and I just don't know. But it's interesting because Kevin Zeitler is very deserving of a new contract, by the way. Someone who's been a Pro Bowl snub in both of his first 2 years with the Ravens. Signed a 3-year deal, was an absolute steal when he signed it. Getting up there in age a little bit, but still very quality offensive guard. Someone who is still one of the best in the league at his position and what he does. And he's going to be a big part of that line in 2023. But I mean, good news he's going to report. I don't know how big that contract stuff is. I don't know if just the wording that Adam Schefter makes it feel like, there might have been a holdout, but he's going to report. So I don't know. We also saw the Ravens during their media portion of this whole thing here. Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins was there. That was a big storyline. J.K. Dobbins was in the building in full uniform, which was really good. And it's good to see El Toro back in the building. I think there was a little worry from some people with everything that the tweets that he put out. Is there going to be a holdout for a contract potentially? We're seeing, Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs and some of these other players, I think, really start to take a stand for running backs here. And to be fair to them, the running back position right now it's in the gutter right now. And it's not fair to these players who I really do think deserve to be paid and be paid. It's interesting the way that running backs are perceived right now. Mini tangent here, I promise, is every year. And I talked about this with Kadri Ismail when J.K. Dobbins had those tweets. First of all, is we were talking about, 30 for a running back. That's the cutoff age. Like when Mark Ingram was in Baltimore, it was, once he hits 30, this and the other. It's gone. It feels like that age has gone down every single year. 29, 28, 27. So I hope the running back position does get straightened out and, those guys do get paid what they deserve. But look, there's going to be a lot of intrigue at minicamp here as they continue to install this offense, continue to work on different things. They're going to have ample opportunities with the guys in the building. Odell Beckham obviously expected to report here, so we'll get some Odell Beckham Ravens content on the field. That'll be super exciting. But, if you're listening to today's show after minicamp happened, some positional battles I'm looking forward to. And obviously, we'll dive more in depth with this as training camp continues to creep up. Minicamp is obviously, you got the battles there too. But left guard is one that a lot of people are going to look at, myself included. I think you're also looking at on the defensive side of the ball. What's the defensive line rotation going to look like? Obviously, I think Michael Pierce is going to be in that. Justin Madubuike, Browser Washington. But, Brent Urban, Travis Jones, where are those guys? Looking at corner, where are all these guys going to play? Who's going to be the slot guy? We're going to see Kyle Hamilton line up at nickel. John Harbaugh, based off John Harbaugh's comments, I wouldn't really bet on that a ton. But, is it going to be Pepe Williams or Darius Washington? Are they going to try out a couple other guys there? Safety-wise, what does Geno Stone's role look like? What does Kyle Hamilton's role look like as well? There are just so many intriguing storylines when it comes to this Ravens team right now. And you can also talk about potentially running backs and some of these undrafted guys too. Like, where does Keaton Mitchell? Where's his role right now? The 6 wide receiver spot, because to me the top 5 are pretty much locks in Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Devin Duvernay, Nelson Aguilar. But then is it Dante Demas? Is it James Prochet, Tylan Wallace? So some of these early minicamp storylines, early minicamp battles that you can kind of figure out and say, once we hit training camp and things really get going, that competition will be a little more heated. And then also I think a storyline is, do the Ravens maybe exit minicamp with, we really need another option? Like, are they saying to themselves, we really need another edge guy, we really need another corner? I think Baltimore's, they're not done adding. I'd be pretty shocked if they were. Now, I don't know if that move is a DeAndre Hopkins or Danielle Hunter or Dalvin Cook level move, but a Marcus Peters move, a Justin Houston move, a Jadeveon Clowney, Yannick Ngakoue, maybe that's the type of move that we're looking at for the Ravens, as they continue to, again, round out their roster and really try to put the best product. And look, they always do. They always try to put the best product on the field. But on paper right now, Baltimore's biggest needs are at edge and at corner. So if the Ravens maybe exit minicamp and say, look, we like what we saw from Adafo, we like what we saw from David Ojabo, I think the team's really happy with the progress from those two guys. But maybe just one more guy. I'm excited to see how the coaching staff also just, coaching up these guys. Todd Monken, his fiery approach, which is really cool. Seems like the players are really on board with his teaching style and are very on board with how he explains things. Chuck Smith is someone, the new outside linebackers coach, who obviously has experience at the NFL level, has success there. And to me, someone who could be huge in the development of guys like Adafo Owe and David Ojabo, even like T. Martin at the quarterback position, right? Obviously the wide receiver coach for this team, familiar with those guys, but moving back to his natural position at quarterback coach, and you have Greg Lewis as the wide receivers coach. Coaching changes can sometimes go under the radar. They really, really can. And to me, I'm excited to see how this coaching staff really steps up to the plate, because I think they really can step up to the plate in this situation. We'll hear from John Harbaugh. We'll hear from multiple members of the team over the course of the next couple of days here. I'm excited to see what they have to say as well. So it's exciting, again, just to see these stepping stones one by one as we're getting closer and closer to the regular season, and maybe closer and closer to a Baltimore Ravens 2023 championship and Super Bowl title, which I just think would be so incredible, especially considering, all that Lamar Jackson's gone through to get to this point, how he has improved his game. Honestly, Lamar's someone who I want to see win a championship so badly. He's one of those guys who I think 100% deserves it. And for the city, it'd be incredible. So hopefully this is another step in that step to a championship. We will see how it all plays out for him here in 2023. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm going to get back here tomorrow. More Ravens content, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.